You looking to cash out on the WNBA? Because I am too. In my last video, we cashed out on Natasha Cloud over her PRA, Ogunbowale over her PRA. We even cashed this juicy same game parlay for Arike Ogunbowale over her points, rebounds, and assists. If it's your first time checking out the channel, I encourage you to subscribe because I'm dropping videos just like this every single day. So in today's video, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go through Outlier. We'll preview all the player props for this upcoming 2-game slate in the WNBA. And by the end of it, you'll get to see my best bets. And if that sounds interesting, let's go. We're kicking off the slate with a cracking game between the Connecticut Sun and the Minnesota Lynx. It is Independence Day. Happy celebrations to y'all. The Connecticut Sun 15-4, second in the East, while the Minnesota Lynx are 14-5. They're number 1 in the West. Sun just had a good win over the Mercury, and the Lynx actually just came off a loss against the Liberty. These teams have met before already this season. The Sun, they won that game by 1 point in overtime. So hopefully we get another cracking game in this one. It should be close, and if we're betting player props, we need a close game. So let's take a look at what we have. We'll start with the Connecticut Sun on the road. The lineups. No major injuries come into this game, which is good. So let's get into the preview, starting with Duana Bonner. First thing to call out, points line at 15.5. I think that's the lowest line we've seen her at so far this season, but let's talk about it. Her line at 15.5, up against a tough Minnesota Lynx defense. Both teams, excellent. I think they're 1-2 defensively this season. So no real surprise to see the line's a little bit lower, but 15.5, she's hit 16 of her last, 6 of her last 10, 14 of 19 games this season. Up against the Minnesota Lynx, she did score 20 points when they played last, 82-83, a high-scoring game. The insight from Outlier is that Duana Bonner has failed to exceed 15.5 points in 4 out of her last 5 games on the road. That's an interesting stat. I don't know how much you can put into that. Given the form against the Lynx is pretty good. The line's quite low. She's covered it well in the season. I get defensively the Lynx are there, but yeah, I don't think I could take a bet on Duana Bonner. Which way do I lean? I'd probably lean towards the under. Bonner has been playing as great as of late, somewhat inconsistent, but she's more than capable of scoring 20. I just don't see it happening, but no bet on Bonner's points. Something we could look at, though, with her rebounds. I've had a bit of success betting on Bonner's rebounds in the year. She's 9 out of 19 games, 6.1. She's cashed in 6 out of her last 10, 3 out of 8 in her last 8 games against the Lynx. She only had 3 boards when they last played at the start of the season. This Minnesota Lynx team does give up a lot of rebounds, though, as good as they are at everything else. Rebounding, not necessarily their forte. Bonner's rebound numbers against the Lynx are a little bit inconsistent, so I don't think I can take her there. So personally, no bets on Bonner. I can't see an angle, can't find an edge, but I'm sure that we'll find something. Let's get to Alyssa Thomas. Now, Alyssa Thomas, her points line's at 11.5. Now, fading her points plus assists might be an angle that I choose to look at, but we'll go through each prop one by one. Her points line at 11.5. She's cashed in 6 out of her last 10. So that's the under. Let's look at the over. 4 out of her last 10, 9 out of 19 games this season. And in head-to-head matches, 8 games against the Lynx. 8 games she's gone over, 100% hit rate. She scored 18 points when they matched up earlier this season. It's pretty wild. But looking at how the season is going, she started off quite well, has started to slow down a little bit. So 11.5, great hit rate. Not going to lie about that. That's the thing about Alyssa Thomas. I'd probably lean to the over. And the reason why is basically how she scores. She scores a lot of points inside. And if anything, that's where the Lynx probably aren't as strong defensively. They're very good at defending the perimeter. But at the same time, this Connecticut Sun team doesn't score much from the perimeter anyway. So I lean to the over, but it's not a bet that I'm going to take. I'm probably not loving the point props in this game, so we might have to find a different angle for it. But let's take a look at her assists. That line's at 6.5, which is quite low. We normally see this line at 7.5, but given the matchup, it makes sense. She's cashed in 12 out of 19 games this season. 6 out of her last 10, she's hit the over, averaging 6.4. Keep in mind, this line is quite low. Looking at head-to-head matchups, 5 out of her last 8 against the Lynx. So she only had 5 assists when they matched up last. What I'd be interested to see is how she performs on the road. So let's take a look at that. In 9 road games this season, she's gone over 6.5 assists in only 4 of them. So the under in her assists is tickling my fancy. Plus 114. It's got a pretty strong hit rate. The one thing I wanted to check is her points plus assists, because the under for that's probably been cashing quite well. Under 19.5 points plus assists for Alyssa Thomas against the Minnesota Lynx, who allow the second fewest points and the fewest assists. She's hit the under in 12 out of 19 games. The problem here is in the head-to-head matchup, she's gone over in 7 out of her last 8. But I've probably been leaning towards that. We've got an outlier stat here. Alyssa Thomas failed to exceed 19.5 points plus assists in 5 out of her last 6 games versus top 5 defenses for assists allowed. So the only game where she did go over was the last matchup against the Minnesota Lynx. Outside of that, the Mystics twice, the Liberty, the Storm, and the Mystics again. So 3 times against the Mystics, Alyssa Thomas went under, which kind of throws this stat out a little bit, but it is telling us something. So I think what we're going to think about, that 18 points she scored against them when they last played, she played 43 minutes. That's one thing to keep in mind. She played 43 minutes, she took 14 shots. Now, if we look at her last 5 games to see what type of form we're dealing with, we're seeing only 8 shot attempts from her. So much lower than what she took last time. And she's getting about 36 minutes. So not the 40-odd minutes she got last time. That's pretty much the whole game, is it not? 43 minutes. So it must have been an OT game. So, yeah, 43 minutes is plenty. These days, she's playing 34 minutes on average on the season. As of late, we've seen an uplift in her minutes. But I think the main thing to call out here is the shot attempts. So she took 14 shots in that last game against the Minnesota Lynx very early in the season. It actually ties her season high in shot attempts. So the point side of thing, I probably don't love as much. So I think the under 19.5 points plus assists, it's not such a bad play. I'm going to add it to my list of leans. I don't hate that. I can see that happening. Let's take a look at her boards. 9.5 rebounds for Alyssa Thomas. 8 out of 19 games she's cashed the over in. We do know that the Lynx do give up quite a few boards. And if we look at head-to-head matchups, she did only have 7 rebounds in that last game against the Lynx. So if she didn't rebound well and Bonner didn't rebound well, we probably found what? DeJournette, Brianna Jones, maybe they got a lot of boards. She hasn't rebounded too well against the Lynx in the past. She hasn't covered this line at 9.5 very well this season. So if you're looking at unders, maybe the under in her PRA at 28.5 could be a look. She's actually hit the over in 12 out of 19 games, though. So that rebound line does seem obnoxiously high, in my opinion. So I'd probably lean to the under with that. That plus money play. At the same time, the fact that the Lynx aren't a strong rebounding team, that worries me a little bit. So I probably wouldn't take the under on that. I think the points plus assists, that probably makes more sense to me in my mind. Let's take a look at DeJournette Carrington, one of my faves. So her points line at 13.5. She's cashed this in 6 out of her last 10. 3 consecutive games she's hit the over. On the season, she's cashed in 11 out of 19 games. In head-to-head matchups against the Lynx, 8 games. She's only covered this line once. Her minutes, somewhat restricted. The most she's seen is 23. She got 23 minutes when they played earlier this year, scoring 8 points. On the season, she's getting 29.5 minutes. So we've seen her, that last game against the Lynx, probably one of her lower games in terms of minutes played. But even with the increased minutes, I'm not sure whether she can cover the points line here. Take a look at how DeJournette Carrington scores a lot of her points. It's in the transition. She gets to the free throw line from spot-up shooting. Minnesota Lynx, pretty good at defending a lot of those types of play styles. So I'd be a little bit hesitant to take the points. But let's take a look at her rebounds. The over 4.5 is at minus 145. So odds makers favoring the over in this one. She's covered in only 9 of 19 games. And if you look at the head-to-head stuff, 1 out of her last 8 against the Lynx. So she only had 3 boards against them last time. So got a lot of those boards. More than capable, don't get me wrong. And I'm not saying to take the under, but I personally can't find an angle here to take DeJournette Carrington for an over. So I have to pass on that. We have Brianna Jones up next. Her point sign's at 13.5. Rebound line at 5.5. So let's see. In terms of her points, 4 out of her last 10. 9 out of 19 games this season. So the hit rate's not excellent. Last game against the Lynx, she did score 19 points. She'd be feasted in 27 minutes. Looking at her season data, she's getting 25 minutes a night and almost 10 shot attempts. So it's not too bad. And Brianna Jones does score a lot of her points down low. Scores up in the post. And the Minnesota Lynx, they're probably mid-tier when it comes to defending the post area. If she can get some offensive rebounds, she can definitely get some putbacks here. So if we're talking about scoring for the Connecticut Sun, I'm not loving Alyssa Thomas. Don't want to Bonner. I'm not ultimately feeling. I think Bonner can score some points, but she ain't playing at her best right now. I think Brianna Jones more than capable of covering this 13.5 against this Minnesota Lynx team. So I don't hate this. I'm going to sit on that as a lean. Brianna Jones over 13.5 points. Taking a look at her rebounds, 5.5 to the over, minus 119. She's only hit in 6 out of 19 games this season. So this line's a little bit elevated due to the matchup. Head-to-head numbers, she did have 6 rebounds the last time they played in 27 minutes. It was a higher scoring game. I don't imagine it to be as high scoring in this one. Looking at her more recent form, she's only hit in 3 of the last 10. And outlier stats, Brenna Jones has failed to exceed 5.5 rebounds in 11 of her last 14 games. So on form alone, this is not looking good. But this is one of those things where all signs point to the under, right? All signs point to the under. In terms of the numbers and the data, it makes sense. But based on what I've seen in the W so far this season, I might just take the over on this one because the odds makers have set it at 5.5 for a reason. So they have a feeling that she's going to go over. It's minus 119 to the over. So despite the hit rate being so low, they're liking Brianna Jones to go over in this. So, and I think one thing to keep in mind, we'll probably see Alyssa Thomas defending Collier in this one. So Bonner or Brianna Jones probably have the better matchup for rebounding. They'll probably get more opportunities. So I understand that. And I'll probably look, you sports books can't trap me with all this data and shit. I'm taking Brianna Jones over her rebounds, points and rebounds. It ain't looking too bad. So I think she dominates today. Who else we can find? I think that's the only value we're going to find in Connecticut Sun being those players. Oh, we do have Tyesha Harris. Let's take a look at her points. It's at 9.5 or 10.5, depending which book you use. She's hit in 6 of her last 10, 11 out of 19 games. And her last game against the Lynx, she only scored 7 points. So I wasn't overly keen on looking Tyesha Harris for this one. Reason being is she does score a lot of her points outside, mid-range, off the pick and roll, and out shooting, whereas the Minnesota Lynx, somewhat decent at defending those areas of the floor. I wonder the last time they played. So, yeah, based on what I've seen, she'd probably go over because none of it makes sense in the W. But I don't want to encourage anyone to take that bet, but I can definitely see it happening. Let's talk about this Minnesota Lynx squad and Nafisa Collier first. So her point line's at 19.5. She's covered in 4 of 10, 11 out of 20 games this season, up against the number 1 defense in the league. If you think about the last matchup she had against the Connecticut Sun, she scored 31 points. She's covered this line in 5 out of her last 6 games against the Connecticut Sun. The outlier stat on this is that Nafisa Collier has failed to exceed 19.5 points in 4 out of her last 5 games versus top 5 defenses for points allowed. And these are games against the Storm, the Dream, the Liberty, the Sky, and the Liberty again. She has had it difficult. But can you overlook this form she's got against the Sun? She's been killing them. Too sure which way to go. Both of the data is somewhat contradicting. I don't know what her home numbers look like. At home this season, she's covered this line in 6. She's hit the under in 6 out of her last 10. My apologies. She hasn't covered this at all. 4 out of her last 10, averaging 20 points at home. So I'd personally lean to the under, but not a bet that I'm willing to take right now. Let's take a look at her assists because I think that could be a good look. There's a lot of value in Nafisa Collier and getting some assists, I'll tell you that. So her line's at 3.5, minus 152 to the over. She's covered in 11 out of her last 20 games. In head-to-head matchup, she did have 4 assists the last time these teams met. And I think this correlates well. If you don't think she's going to score some points, then she's going to be setting some girls up. So leaning to the over on this. The hit rate on it's not too bad, but I think it's the potential. Her ceiling is 6 to 7 assists, whereas her floor is about 2 to 3. And you only need 4. Definitely the over is the look. At minus 152, though, don't necessarily love those odds. So I'd be a little bit hesitant to play it as a straight bet, but if you can find that line on any of your fantasy sites, Prize Picks, Underdog, Dabble, Chalkboard, whatever that stuff is, if you can get her at 3.5 to the over in assists, I honestly don't think that's such a bad play. I just had a look at my sportsbook. I can get it for minus 134, so it's pretty decent. Could be a nice parlay piece, but Nafisa Collier, I'll put that on my list of leans. Not one that I'm willing to take straight up, but I have to combine it with something else. But I don't think that's such a bad look. Let's take a look at her rebounds now. 9.5 boards. She's covered in 12 of 20 games this season. Last time she played against the Connecticut Sun, she had 11 rebounds. She's only covered in 2 out of her last 6 games against them. The Sun, great rebounding team. They allow the fewest rebounds in the league. The outlier stat on this is that Collier's exceeded 9.5 rebounds in 4 out of her last 5 games. She's averaging 10.4 boards. So that's checking out, and that's making sense. It is defending Alyssa Thomas. Alyssa Thomas is probably not straying too far away from the rim, and she sure as hell ain't taking any outside shots. So the rebound look for Nafisa Collier is not too bad either. I honestly don't hate that. If we look at just her games at home, we see she's covered in 6 out of 10 games at home, averaging 10.8. So she can go big, she can go hard, she can go home. 9.5 just a high line. That's what I'm saying. So I probably lean to the over. I'm not willing to take that because that line is so goddamn high. But I do like the assist play a little bit more. It could be a parlay piece if I take Collier for over on her assists and probably combine that with 5 boards or 7 boards. I can get probably close to plus 100, but we'll see where I land. Next up, we got Kayla McBride. Let's talk. I haven't had any success betting on Kayla McBride this season. I bet her under, she goes over. Bet her over, she goes under. So let's see how we go. Her points line's at 14.5, 5 out of her last 10, 9 out of 20 games this season, and in head-to-head matchups, 4 out of her last 8. When these teams met earlier this year, she scored 13 points in that game, line at 14.5. She played almost 40 minutes. She was 5 from 11 from the field, 3 from 8 from deep. Outlier stats on Kayla McBride and her scoring. Personally lean to the under, but not too much confidence because she's only playing 32 minutes a night now. She's taking 10 shots, though. 10 shots per game, and a lot of those being 3-pointers. This Connecticut Sun team, pretty good at limiting these 3-pointers, but McBride, I bet her under in the last game against the Sky, or second last game against the Sky. She went over anyway, so I'm not taking any bets on Kayla McBride points anymore, I tell you that. Looking at her assists, 3.5. She's hit the over in 4 out of her last 10, 11 out of 20 games this season, and in head-to-head matchups, she's only covered in 1 out of 8. The last game they did play, she did finish on 4 assists, though, but that was a high-scoring game. Up against a Sun team that allows a second fewest assists, I'd probably lean to the under in this, but there's no value in that. Odds minus 158 to the under. Sporks predicting the under as well, so there's no real value in that. But once again, fantasy players looking at you, could be a good look. Her rebound line's at 3.5, 9 out of the last 20 games this season. Head-to-head matchup, she only had 1 rebound when they last played, 3 out of her last 8. So another play, not necessarily loving. An option to take an under here on Kayla McBride. But what I'm thinking is that maybe an under in her PRA could be a good look. 20.5. She had 18 in the last game. It's got a 50% hit rate this season, but that matchup she has is tough. Points, rebounds, and assists. So the under on Kayla McBride could be a good look. She'll 70% of her points above the break. This Connecticut Sun team, second fewest points above the break. They're good at limiting the transition. They don't allow wide open jump shots. So I think they could make life difficult for Kayla McBride in this one. So in the under in her PRA. I don't know about you guys, but that's the under that I'm leaning towards. I guess the one strategy I have whenever the Connecticut Sun play, looking to take someone in the opposite team's backcourt to go under, and it's a pretty successful strategy, not going to lie to you. So Kayla McBride, I'll probably be looking at a parlay for under everything. We might fade this girl. But let's take a look. Who else we got? Alana Smith, perhaps? Alana Smith, her line's at 10.5 points, 4.5 rebounds. What do we see? 6 out of her last 10 games, she's hit the over in her points. 11 out of 20 games this season. Played the Sun 5 times. She's covered only once. Scored 10 points against them early this year in only 23 minutes with 7 shot attempts. Yep. And then as of late, look at her last 5 games. She's getting 25 minutes, 9.4 shot attempts. So the shot attempts are actually up. So given the volume's higher, minutes are slightly higher, I'd probably lean to the over. The outlier stat, though, is letting us know that she's failed to exceed this points line in 4 out of her last 5 games against the top 5 defenses in the league. So she's only covered once against the Sky. Bit of contradicting data there, which makes me a bit nervous. So I'm not betting on Alana Smith. Her rebound line's at 4.5. 6 out of 10 she's covered in. 11 out of 20. Averaging 5 rebounds on the year. She has rebounded very well up against Connecticut Sun. Check that out. 4 out of her last 5. 5.8 as an average. When they matched up earlier this season, she had 7 rebounds. So it's not Collier getting these boards. Alana Smith, she looked like she's going to eat a lot of them. If you look at her recent form coming into this game, 3 out of her last 5 games, she's gotten the boards, gone over, and you can really see it. Yeah, a lot of the teams she struggled against are the ones that shoot the ball quite well. Storm, the Aces, the Mercury, and the Liberty. A lot of teams that can catch fire from downtown, whereas the Spark, the Wings, the Dream, one for the Liberty, the Wings, and the Sky. Not the best outside scoring teams. So very similar to this Connecticut Sun team. They don't score too much outside. There could be a lot of rebounds on offer here for Alana Smith. So I don't mind their rebounds. But It's at minus 132 that you can see here an outlier. And if at minus 132, that means the sportsbook are favoring the overs as well. Do a little bit of line shopping, see if we can find something juicy. Who knows? We might just parlay Alana Smith rebounds with Collier assists and Bob's your uncle. Checking to see if there's anybody else in this Lynx team we can look at. Let's have a quick look at Bridget Carlton. Now, she's really hit and miss, and she doesn't have odds available anyway. But, all right, cool. So, quick summary on this game, if this is the only part of the video you're going to watch. I've got a couple of leads at the moment. Alyssa Thomas taking her under in points and assists. Her minutes aren't as high as they once were, and her production is down. So we're seeing some low lines. I think Brianna Jones can feast in this game. Points and her rebounds. I think it's a good look. I really do like her rebounds. Collier, I do like her assists, but the odds for that aren't great. You have to help something else. And Kayla McBride might fade her PRA, but might take the under in her points, rebounds, and assists as a parlay. Who knows? And then Alana Smith over on the boards. I think that could be a good look too. Let's jump into the next game and see if we can find some more value plays for you gentlemen and ladies. If there are any ladies watch it, let me know in the comment section. If you are a female, a WNBA fan, or just a sports bettor, let me know. Let me know in the comment section and I can address the viewers. Next game, we do have the Aces versus the Washington Mystics. Aces at home in this game. Pretty much on the season, we're seeing the Mystics. They're 5-15. The Aces are 11-6. Cross-conference battle. It's the second time these teams are facing off. 16.5 point favorites for the Las Vegas Aces. So somebody's expecting a mauling. And I have seen quite a few people online looking to take the Aces to cover in this one. And look, the Mystics, they have played well lately. They did 13-point spread, losing by 11 Aces, I believe. They were actually leading that game at one point. I think in the third quarter, they were up 5 or 7 or something like that. They blew it. The Aces killed them in the fourth. Asia Wilson, she was terrible, only scoring 11 points in that game. I did take her over in points. Sucked. In this game, I expected a bounce back. So I'm looking to run Asia Wilson back after that to destroy them. The Washington Mystics, it's also their fourth game in 8 days. So there could be some fatigue. Their defense is going to struggle. And if we're looking at the Aces here, we could look at a couple of unders here for Washington, or maybe just look at the overs for the Aces. We shall see. But we'll kick things off with the Washington Mystics. Let's start there. Ariel Atkins, let's talk about it. Her point line at 13.5, and she has not been playing well. She's gone under in 5 straight games. So she's hit this in 4 out of her last 10, 9 out of 20 games this season. This Aces team on the season, not the greatest defensively, but as of late, they have been a little bit better. So Ariel going under 11 out of the last 20 games. In head-to-head matchups, she's only covered this line once out of 3 games. That last matchup, she scored 13 points in 35 minutes. She was 6 for 14. So a lot of shots, 1 from 5 from deep. A lot of shots, still wasn't able to cover. Didn't get to the free throw line very much at all. If we think about how she'd like to play, what her style's like, and how the Aces like to play defense, that can give us a better lead into how we think this game's going to go, or how Ariel Atkins is going to go. Now, this A team, not very good at defending above the break. A lot of the shooters going to kill them. Where the A are good is they don't let a lot of points in around the rim. Ariel Atkins can score in all levels, outside, inside, pretty much scores all over the court. Spot-up shooting as a pick-and-roll ball handler. To be honest, the matchup for her isn't bad. The matchup is a good one. She should be going over. She just hasn't been playing well as of late. So I can't trust her to break out of this poor streak, but the matchup's nice for her, so I wouldn't take any confidence in betting her under. Looking at her assists, though, 7 out of her last 10, 8 out of her last 20. So it's really a recent, she's been diamond up. If we look at head-to-head matchup, she did have 5 assists in their last game against the Aces. If we look at the outlier statistic here, she's failed to cover this line in 15 and 19 games on the road. So that's not good. On these road games, she has been struggling. But the under, minus 150. So the sports books thinking that she goes under as well. I'm not overly excited to play that. Rebounds, 3.5, 4 out of 10, 9 of 20 this season. And the outlier stat, just letting you know that on the road, she hasn't done too well. 4 out of her last 5 games on the road, she's hit the under. So, yeah, probably lean under on all of these, but betting the under on Ariel Atkins, I'm not overly excited about right now. We've got Stephanie Dolson. She doesn't have any lines up, thank God, because I always find myself betting her over. It doesn't cash. No lines up for Aaliyah Edwards yet. And that's because Dolson is a game time decision in this one. So it's going to it's going to impact the whole court for this Washington Mystics. So we're probably not going to see too many lines for them. We do have lines for Hines Allen, though. And I've been somewhat impressed with the games that I've seen from her as of late. She's been scoring, putting her head down. And you can see it here. She's covered this line in 4 straight games, which is nice. 5 out of her last 10. Only 5 of 20 on the season. But if you take a look at her minutes, they're crazy. They're all over the place. But as of late, we have seen an uplift in her usage, taking a whole lot of shots. So keeping in mind, she averages 6.4 shot attempts per game this season. In her last 4 games, she's put together 8, 8, 11, and 13. So a whole lot of shot attempts for Hines Allen. She did score 16 points in that last game. The last game against the Aces, she scored 14 points from 11 shots. So, yeah, probably lean to over here. I wouldn't worry that her historical form is terrible because she'd be as late. I'd probably lean to the over for her. But I'm expecting an Aces beatdown. I probably don't want to bet any overs for any of the Mystics anyway. So I'll pass on. The rebound line's at 5.5. 6 out of 20 games this season. 5 out of her last 10. Last game against the Aces, she only had 5 boards. The 3 games prior, she did go over. But once again, if we're looking at a beatdown, even though the form against the opponent is nice, the recent form ain't too bad either. Nothing that I'd take. All right, so we've got Julie Van Loo. Just checking. The main thing I'm looking to see here is do I want to fade her assists or her points? So if we are expecting a beatdown, I'm looking for an under for this Washington team. Her point sign's at 9.5. She's covered in 3 over the last 10. She scored 8 points in that last game against the Aces. On the season, 7 out of her last 20 games, averaging 8.4. So that's not good. In her last matchup, she scored 8. So, yeah, the under is probably I'd be leaning. Odds aren't available to take her under at the moment anyway. But given the over is plus 156, under's going to be juiced to the gills. Looking at her assists, it's 5.5, 8 out of 20 games this season. When she last played the Aces, she did have 8 assists. Interesting, 11-point win. But again, if we're expecting a beatdown, I think the under's a good look. But I don't necessarily love it. So I'm probably not going to find an under for the Washington Mystics as much as I want to. So some of these Aces is hopefully something I can find. Let's talk about it. Where shall we start? Let's start with A'ja Wilson. Let's start right here. So, A'ja Wilson, 26.5 points is the line. She's cashed this. 7 out of the last 10, 12 of 17 games this season. This Mystics team ranking in the middle of the league in terms of points allowed. So the matchup's not necessarily the easiest or the hardest, but I don't necessarily think that matters for A'ja Wilson. She's a beast. Looking at the outline statistic for this, she's exceeded this points line in 11 out of her last 14 games. So nothing too crazy going on there. Head-to-heads, she's only hit this in 1 out of 4 games against the Mystics. That last game she played them a couple of days ago, only scored 11 points. She was 4 from 15, 27% from the field, and that was the worst shooting performance she's put together all season. She did bounce back, scoring 28 points, 59% from the field up against the Fever, and I expect dominance to continue. So I do like her over in points. She failed me last time when I bet on her against the Mystics, but I'm going to run it back, and hopefully she delivers. Now we're taking a look at her rebound line. It's at 10.5, 8 of 17 games this season. So the hit rate's not great there. 3 out of her last 10, so it's not great there either. And in head-to-heads, she has covered this in 3 out of her last 4. Had 9 rebounds in that last game against the Mystics. Looking at the insights, A'ja Wilson has failed to exceed this rebound line in 4 out of her last 5 games at home. So at home, she hasn't been rebounding quite well at all. She's still got all home games this season. 5 out of 10. So it's just 4 out of the last 5 games. She's hit the under. So if we check the odds here, the over is at minus 120 though. So the books are still favoring the over despite these trend lines. And I think she's more than capable of beasting it, to be honest. I might take the over in her boards as part of a parlay perhaps, but I do like her points. I like the over in her points. Could look at it over in points plus a double-double perhaps. That could be a look for A'ja Wilson. But then I also worry about the blowout. If the blowout occurs and she doesn't get the minutes, actually she gets 30 minutes every night regardless, right? Even if there's a blowout, she's still going to play 30. So I'm not too worried about a blowout. The rebound play might not be a bad one. Let's look at her assists, 1.5, minus 310 to the over. So you got to take some ridiculous lines for this assist prop. But 13 out of 17 games, she's hit the over. 5 assists the last time she played them. So yeah, I'd probably lean to over 2, but that line is trash. You're not going to get it. You're not going to win any money if you bet that. Let's take a look at Jackie Young. Jackie Young can fill it up, that's for sure. So Jackie Young, she doesn't have a bad matchup in this game. Her points line's at 19.5. She's cashing 4 out of 10, 8 of 16 games this season. 1 out of 4 games against Washington. That last time she played them, she scored 26 points. She was 8 from 12, 3 from 3 from downtown, plus she got to the line. So nice all-round offensive game there for Jackie Young. What I'm worried about is just because she did it last time, I don't think that means she does it again. So if anything, I'd be thinking the under for her points for Jackie Young. For a player that with numbers like this, the up and down, she's already had her up against the Washington side. I'd probably be taking her under. Coincides with the Asia Wilson over. So that's the way that I'd be leaning. Her assist line's at 5.5, 8 of 16 games. Last time she played against them, she only had 1 assist. Fair enough. She was shooting that ball every single time. But even though she had 1 assist against them last time, the line's still at 5.5. So the books might be onto something. If we look at the insight, she's failed to exceed this line in 5 out of her last 6 games against top 5 defenses for assists allowed. So the Mystics don't necessarily allow too many assists. Fair enough. The under is favored at minus 135. So I can't necessarily go against that. I'd lean to the under for Jackie Young on her assists as well. Looking at her boards, 4.5. She's only hit this in 2 of 10 games, 7 out of 16 games. So her recent form rebounding has not been good. If you look at her home games, Jackie Young has failed to exceed 4.5 rebounds in 7 consecutive games at home. So who knows? Do we do the ultimate fade on Jackie Young? Under in points, under in rebounds, under in assists. Asia could dominate. Kelsey Plum could get busy with it. We could look at that. Maybe. I might be looking at, let's just take a look at this. Let's look at the PRA, 28.5. 5 out of 10 this season, 10 out of 16 on the year. So the hit rate on this is pretty good. If we look at her hit rate just at home, she's hit this in 6 out of her last 10 games at home. But she can put up a stinker sometimes. And this might be a game where she does it. But I'm not willing to risk a full unit on the PRA. I could put a little bit on her under points, under rebounds, under assists, and just do the ultimate fade of Jackie Young and see if we can cash that. But we'll see how desperate I am to get a bet out. Outside of Young, let's have a look at Kelsey Plum. Kelsey Plum, her point sign's at 18.5. She's cashed this in 4 out of her last 10. She just scored 34 points against the Fever, 9 out of 17 games this season. And looking at her games against the Mystics, she only scored 2 points the last time these guys played. 2 points. Rubbish. In 35 minutes. Ugh. 1 from 8. Ugh. Terrible game for Kelsey Plum last time. I don't know too much about her, but I would be surprised if we see her bounce back with a vengeance. Check that out. So she scores 2 points against the Mystics, rocks up against the Indiana Fever and scores 34 points. That's the swings of the WNBA. So I'd been leaning to her over purely because she was so bad last time. I think she knows she needs to, probably doesn't need to be better. That's a dumb thing to say. I think she can be better for sure. I'd lean to over, but I don't think I'm going to take that bet if I'm going to back Asia Wilson. Her assist line's at 5.5. She's only cashed this in 5 of 17 games this season. That last game against the Mystics, she did have 8 assists, though. She was diamond up. So I'm not going to bet the over just because it's happened before. She might shoot the ball a lot more, thus resulting in less assists. Looking at the outlier stats, she's failed to exceed this in 9 out of her last 11 games. But the under is at minus 160, so the sports books favoring the under as well. At those odds, I wouldn't be betting it. But again, prize picks, underdog, whatever it is, that fantasy shit, the under for Kelsey Plum and her assist is probably the way to go. All right, so there's not too many lines available for that game, but I do have a nice juicy little list to go through. For that game, I'm looking at the overs for Asia Wilson. Most likely her points. The rebounds aren't too bad either. And I'll be looking to probably fade Jackie Young in this one. Points, rebounds, and assists. I don't know. I feel like Kelsey Plum can pick up her usage. Chelsea Gray could definitely do more, and Asia Wilson's going to be better. Thinking about taking the unders and Jackie Young, but we'll see. If you're interested in tailing whatever my bets are, then you can check it out on Winnable. No pressure, though. I strongly encourage you to do your own research. Use the numbers that I've shown you today to make your own plays. At the end of the day, the better you are at making your own picks, the better you're going to be in the long run. I do have a strategy for betting on the WNBA, especially when it comes to points. If you're interested in checking that out, it's in the video link below. But if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. throw some support my way, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.